Hello everyone, this is Tim, and today I'm going to talk about a little project that I mentioned in the YouTube RPG Brigade group on Facebook. I get these weird ideas to try to get people to collaborate and work together to make something cool, and what I came up with was this idea that everyone is going to help out in making a gigantic mega dungeon, and I should probably define what that means. A mega dungeon is something that is usually pretty large, has many levels, and there's lots of room for an adventuring party to go in very many different ways. It's not usually a railroad track straight through the dungeon. So the GM has really no idea what direction the party's going to go, if they can go down or up a level before they clean out the level that they're on. There's a lot of room for choices, different directions to take, and so forth. I'm going to put a link down below for a bunch of resources about the philosophy behind mega dungeons, how to design them, what are some common mistakes, etc. What I wanted to emphasize here is that don't be afraid to be weird. Think of the dungeon not just as a big pile of bricks and mortar and stone and tunnels, not just the building blocks of the dungeon, but that it could be a very supernatural place. The dungeon could be alive. It could be like a mythical underworld where things happen for reasons that you might not be able to fathom with your little mortal brain. Bizarre things can happen. Strange things can happen. Things that physics can't really talk about, can't really define. You can throw all those laws of nature out the window. Don't be afraid to do that. And really, the idea, I mean, if you think of a deck of playing cards, that's kind of what I'm going for here, where everybody who participates with this project is going to be designing one level of the dungeon. Think of it like one playing card. And then the viewers can grab whatever levels are published via YouTube videos and pile them all together. So you take all the cards, stack them up, shuffle them, and that's going to be the Mega Dungeon. It's good on a couple levels. I did this with my Hex World series of world building. That it was moderately successful. There was people that participated, but the idea is that it could keep growing. It could be infinite. If years down the line people want to design a level for this, they are more than welcome to. It will just be another level of the Mega Dungeon. So I think I'm going to title this the YouTube RPG Brigade Mega Dungeon, and it's definitely going to have a fantasy vibe. So keep it fantasy, keep it like that, and I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about various things that I suggest that you should try to include in your level of the dungeon. Alright, step number one will be to actually get out some graph paper, and this is going to be the 8.5 inch by 11 inch paper size, and you're going to draw your dungeon. Don't be afraid to get creative with it, weird, if you want to use markers, colored pencils, if you want to just have pen, or, whatever you want to do, feel free. You can color code it, have a lot of fun, don't be afraid to be, get weird with it. This is going to be your level of the dungeon. It would probably be best to draw this in the landscape orientation, as I think that would make it easier to include in the video. So, myself, I think I'm just going to get out a mechanical black pencil, maybe a pen, and we'll see where it goes from there. I'm going to try to participate in this as well. And I'm going to get to more of the details in the next steps. Alright, step two will be to go through your map and put in numbers, and you can also do letters as well. So if you have a group of rooms that are associated with each other, you could have like 1A, 1B, 1C, and etc. That way later you can key all those entries and tell us what's in those rooms. Alright, the next step is going to be to make a key for your level of the dungeon with the symbols you're going to use in it. That way we know what all your little squiggles on the map mean. Also detail what is in each of the numbered rooms, but do so in a systemless manner. Feel free to use common monster names, spell names, etc. But don't stress too much about system or addition or whatever game you're going to use. If you make up your own creatures, tell us about them, describe them. And basically, just as a general rule, just describe whatever is in those rooms to the best of your ability. Okay, the next step is going to be to design and fill out a wandering monster table for your level of the dungeon. If you have very distinct different areas in your level, it might be a good idea to have a multiple group of tables. Your table can be as large as you like, but we're going to try to keep each table to 20 creatures or less. If you want to make sure that certain creatures show up more often, like if that's, if that's the majority of the encounters you're going to face, then give that creature more of those numbers. Let's say like 15 to 20 would be a certain type of creature. So fill out Wandering Monster tables, and we'll move on to the next step. One thing to keep in mind when you're filling your rooms with various creatures, I'm going to only suggest that you fill in 1/3 of those rooms with creatures. And this is sort of one of those things that is a philosophical thing that's mentioned a lot in the OSR, talking about how exploration should be more of a thing you're going for with a Megadungeon. Every room should not be packed with various creatures, like 20 different orcs in this one room next to, 27 different kobolds. But yeah, so just focus on filling up 1/3 of the rooms with creatures. Another thing to think about is that these other rooms, those 2/3 of the rooms, could have various strange things, creepy things, weird things, fantastical things, supernatural stuff, and description. Even though the room is empty, there might be some unique way of describing it so that it feels like it's, you're coming upon a strange room, and something just to give to the players to tell them what their five senses are getting from that room. And I want to emphasize again that this is more of a supernatural underworld where normal physics need not apply. You have magic as an explanation for a lot of things. This place that we're going to make is corrupt. It's a blight on the face of the world, and in the world, there's a reason that evil and chaotic things tend to make this place their home. They feed off that power and thrive on it. And don't be afraid to go a little bit out of your comfort zone, a little bit out of the box here. Be weird. That's what I'm expecting. One thing to keep in mind is that you should think about your dungeon level as a whole. Think about the whole thing. Think about politics. Think about what various factions of creatures or humans or whatever races you're going to populate that, how they interact, how they get along. Do they hate each other? Do they trade with each other? Do they enslave each other? Do they sacrifice each other? What kind of thoughts are going through their heads when they bump into another one of these creatures in the dungeon? These are all things you need to think about. What is the ecosystem of the dungeon? How does it operate? How do things that are in there survive? These are all things that should probably go into your thought process when making it. It doesn't have to be realistic to a certain extent because, like I said, it doesn't really survive the law of physics. It can do weird things in the dungeon. You can spontaneously have a room that generates food, for instance. But, try to have it make some sort of logical sense. And I guess I should clarify, I meant logical sense in the form of a fantastic, fantasy realm, not necessarily in what makes sense in our real world. You should also think about what gods or just other things that they worship. Maybe there's different factions and they worship different things. Maybe there's a holy war going on between two of the factions in your level. There's lots of room here to come up with a lot of cool ideas. Don't be afraid to try something different. And don't be afraid to have them worship something strange. Maybe they worship a large block of a certain rare element that's in the center of the dungeon, just as an example. Next step is put some treasure in. Put some items of antiquity, of power. Put in strange little mundane things that could be just something that they like to hold on to, something that is precious to the characters that find them. Put in cursed objects. Put in things that perhaps are both cursed and blessed. They have a pro and a con. I would think that most of us would be somewhere, in the range of stingy to moderate as far as these things go. But if you really want to put a lot of things in here, be a little bit of a Monty Hall, then go ahead and do that. It's your level of the dungeon. One thing to emphasize is that your level of the dungeon will be able to connect to the dungeon above you and the dungeon below you. At least that's the original concept. However, if you want to do something completely different, your level of the dungeon could connect via teleport gateways. Basically, the idea here is that everyone is going to put out a level, and they're all going to stack up. And if a lot of people participate in this, you really can pick and choose what levels you want to incorporate, how you want to stack them up, and you can mix and match, and it's kind of nice. You can pick and choose whatever ones you want to use, and if there's a few out there that are lame, you can discard them. But don't be too afraid of that. Don't be afraid to just do your best. I would love to see someone put something out, then not do it at all because they're scared of what it looks like, or it won't be as good as this other person's. Don't let the fears get into you. I would love to see a lot of participation with this project. It would be very cool to see how different people do a level of a dungeon, especially maybe even those that don't usually do this sort of thing. Maybe they would bring something new to dungeons that we haven't seen for a while. I would love to see very unique ideas and very cool dungeons. So participate, please. So I guess the last thing is that you really just need to put it out in a video. If you really don't want to use video format, you can go to the Facebook group. I put the links down there below in all my videos these days. You can use the add file section and host your level there. In fact, even if you do put out a video, I would suggest maybe putting all your information in a PDF so you can share it with other people and that they can see it that way as well. Because sometimes video formatting isn't the best for trying to get information across. Sometimes the written word is a lot better. So thanks for watching. I hope to see a big, massive pile of ruined levels of a dungeon. And thanks for watching. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask.